So we finally got the only MCU film of 2024, Deadpool and Wolverine. And this is also the first X-Men film to come out since August of 2020, when the last one was New Mutants. I guess I should briefly talk about the first two, since I surprisingly have not talked about the Deadpool movies very much on this channel. The first Deadpool movie is honestly one of my favorite comic book films ever. The humor works, the action works, the actors work, everything just seems to come together, even though I understand the villain is pretty bland, but I think that was the entire point. He's just a guy for Deadpool to kill. It didn't really bother me, and the actor did fine, but that would be the only mark I would put on that film, is that the villain's kinda boring. I watched the second film a couple of days before I saw this movie, which I saw last night, and it's both better and worse than I remember, because the humor is hit and miss. Way more. I know there's not a single comedy that doesn't have jokes that miss. All of them have jokes that miss. Again, even the first Deadpool or other movies like Guardians of the Galaxy, they had jokes that didn't work. But it really seemed 50-50 in Deadpool 2. There were some that were really funny, and there were some that made me groan. The action was fine, even though the CGI effects sucked, even more so than the first movie, even though it had a higher budget, so I guess they tried more effects, and it just didn't work. And I wasn't a huge fan of the kid being the villain. I thought that was kind of dumb. But it was fine. It was totally fine. As far as the Wolverine movies go, I don't think I hate any of them. I haven't seen The Wolverine in years, so I honestly don't remember if I liked that one or not. I remember the Silver Samurai bit being pretty stupid, but up to that point I remember thinking it was fine, and Logan is fantastic. So yeah, the X-Men films have been kind of hit and miss. And once again, I've liked what the MCU films that have been put out recently. Again, most of them. The last one that came out was The Marvels, and I did not really care for that. But I liked Ant-Man, and I really liked Guardians of the Galaxy. And next year, they're finishing Phase 5 with Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts, both of which I'm hoping are good. Captain America 4 actually looks like it could be pretty good. And then they start off Phase 5 with the new Fantastic Four film. But this is the only one we're getting this year. I know we got Echo, and we're getting that Agatha show, but this is the only movie we're getting. And thankfully, it was a damn good one. Now, I'm gonna have to go into spoilers with them, because there's a lot I want to talk about, especially with the cameos that show up. But I will say, first off, is that I liked the cameos in this one. And I know some people are gonna bitch about how I liked the cameos in this one, but didn't like the ones in The Flash. Well, there's a few things as to why. One, they actually got the actors for this instead of resorting to crappy PS2 level CGI. Two, the cameos actually helped progress the story. The characters involved actually did something and actually helped the heroes or fought against the heroes. They did something to progress the story. And third, they didn't resort to resurrecting dead actors for their cameos, unlike The Flash did with both George Reeves and Christopher Reeve and Adam West. This one got actors that are still alive. I can't believe that has to be a compliment now, but whatever. So the main plot of this is Wade Wilson he's brought into the TVA. I assumed that it was because of his time travel shenanigans at the end of Deadpool 2, and he even thought the same thing in the movie, but that's not why he's brought. He's brought for a quote-unquote higher purpose, because the superiors of this one British douchebag, who's essentially one of the villains of this movie, said that he needs to be brought in for a higher purpose, but they never specifically say what it was. And honestly, I much prefer that other than some kind of stupid prophecy where a character has a set destiny that they have to fulfill. So I like that it's kind of up to interpretation. And thankfully they didn't resort to resurrecting the dead Wolverine from the original X-Men timeline who died in Logan. And here's where I'm going to have to go into spoilers, because I physically can't talk about this movie without going into spoilers. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, I'll tell you this, it's really good. It's one of the best MCU films we've gotten recently. So, yeah. So now I have to go into spoilers. The movie opens with a really funny action sequence of Deadpool literally digging up what's left of Logan's corpse, which is basically the adamantium skeleton, and literally killing a bunch of TVA agents with it while NSYNC plays in the background. So it started off just like the other ones, and it was pretty damn funny. I'm kind of torn on the opening credits, because with the last two, they tried to make them very comedic and fourth wall breaking. Like in the first one, going through the credits, it said starring God's perfect idiot, an entirely CGI character, and stuff like that, and directed by some asshole. It was stuff like that. And the second one did mostly the same thing. This one, it was more traditional. Like, the credits looked like the first two, but during this action sequence, but they were just traditional credits, like directed by Sean Levy, starring Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, and written by 5 different people. It was more traditional credits, which I kind of liked the joke of the first two where it was doing that, but I do think it would have gotten old here. So I'm gonna go on the positive side of that. I'm glad they didn't keep doing this, because eventually that joke was gonna get run into the ground. And already the second one's wasn't nearly as funny as the first one. So, yeah. And so I'm going to talk about all of the cameos, because this is basically, it's not entirely Cameo the movie, kind of what I thought Doctor Strange 2 was going to be, and what a bunch of people were claiming Doctor Strange 2 was going to be, even though it wasn't. That's one of the reasons why that movie got kind of a bad rep, is because everybody claimed it was going to be Cameo the movie, and it wasn't at all. It had a few cameos, but that's about it. This one has a lot more, but I like how they do it. So it's Wolverine and Deadpool are in the Void, which is the thing from Loki, and they're in basically the Fox universe there, even with the destroyed 20th Century Fox logo, which would have been extremely funny had it not been given away in the set photos like a year ago. So it makes sense that there are a lot of Fox characters here, and they pull something really clever where Chris Evans shows up, and you're naturally supposed to think it's Captain America. After a little bit, even before he said Flame On, I kind of figured it was Johnny Storm, because Deadpool's like freaking out, it's like, oh, he's gonna do the thing. I'm like, okay, it's Johnny Storm. It's good. That's gonna be the joke. It's gonna be Johnny Storm, and that's who it was. Then you had other characters from the older X-Men films, like the original Sabretooth from the 2000 movie, who gets killed in about 5 seconds. You had Toad, who I'm pretty sure is Ray Park again. It had Pyro from the original films, and he has a bigger part than you would think. He's not just a cameo. He has a slightly bigger part in this movie. Let's see, and then there's the Resistance, who are fighting against Cassandra Nova, who I'll get into later, where it consists of Jennifer Garner's Elektra, Wesley Snipes' Blade, X-23 from Logan, and Channing Tatum as Gambit. Now, I understand why they brought him into this, is because his Gambit movie was in development hell for God knows how long, and then was eventually canceled. I would have much rather seen Taylor Kitsch, not only because I'm not the biggest fan of Channing Tatum, but it would have been nice to see him actually get to play Gambit instead of really Gambit in name only. I don't mind X-Men Origins Wolverine that much, but Gambit was not Gambit. He had the same powers and the same name and the southern accent, but that was about all he had in common with the character. But it was kind of cool. But it was cool seeing all these cameos. And they actually help in the story. They help Deadpool and Wolverine get out of the Void. And so I should talk about the humor, because this is something that's a trademark of Deadpool, obviously, is because he's one of the more comedic characters in the Marvel Universe. He's basically a very much more crass Spider-Man. It's mostly pretty good. Are there jokes that don't work? Again, what comedy has jokes that don't work? Like, it has some jokes that had me rolling my eyes, but most of the jokes did make me laugh. One of my favorite jokes was when we first meet Cassandra Nova, who, if you didn't know, is the sister to Charles Xavier. And we first see her where she's sitting in Charles's wheelchair, and then she immediately stands up from it, and Deadpool makes a joke about how that won't go over well with the woke crowd because they'd find it ableist. That's pretty damn funny. And Cassandra Nova herself is actually a pretty intimidating villain. She does this thing where she sees into your mind and then your memories by literally putting her hand through your brain, like almost kind of like just like phasing through it like the Flash would. It's pretty pretty weird to see, but it looks good. And that's something else. The effects look really good. But again, this is nothing new for Marvel. People like to bitch about Marvel's CGI, and these are the idiots that point to the same 5 shots of the last few films to point out where the CGI is bad. They say, oh, the third eye at the end of Doctor Strange 2 didn't look good. That means the CGI was bad. Or that one weird floating head from Love and Thunder means that CGI was bad. Did they not watch the rest of the film? Or are they just going off the one bad CGI scene that was posted on Twitter? Or that one bad green screen effect from Black Widow? It's usually the same 5 scenes, or not even scenes, they're just the same 5 shots that people used to say that the MCU CGI is garbage. None of them apparently watched Shang-Chi, or Eternals, or WandaVision, or Loki, which all had great CGI across the board. Are there effects that don't work in some MCU films? Yeah, but again, it's usually like one shot, and people use that to bitch about it. That's the thing, is that people just seem to turn on Marvel because it was popular to do so after Endgame. Again, people do that with anything that's popular. As soon as Stranger Things got popular, people immediately jumped on the bandwagon saying, it's overrated, it's not that good. And I don't find Stranger Things to be that good anymore because each season kind of decreased in quality, but it seemed like as soon as season 1 got popular, a bunch of people jumped on the bandwagon even before season 2 came out. And that's really what's happened to Marvel, is that some people just want to betray. Now, don't get me wrong, Marvel is still owned by Disney, which I hate that they're owned by Disney. But the simple fact is that Kevin Feige knows when to tell Disney to fuck off. He knows that you should not shove a bunch of woke shit in your mouth. Have they done it before? Yeah, sometimes. But again, sometimes. And usually those are the worst ones, like She-Hulk, or the Marvels, or Miss Marvel. But it seems like, especially when it came to this movie, it seemed like he just said no. He said, absolutely not. This is my studio's movie. You don't get to touch it. It's like, you can produce it. Your name can be on this, but this is my studio's movie. And if you're wondering what I think of Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Doctor Doom, I probably won't make a full video on it. I may, because it also had the announcement of the new Fantastic Four title, First Steps. I'm torn on it. I think he could make a very good Doctor Doom. People are calling it a desperation move, and I can definitely understand that, but I think they're getting a little overboard with it. Maybe they just thought that he was the best actor for the role. I've seen people fan cast Cillian Murphy as it, and I think he could have been a pretty cool Doctor Doom, but maybe RDJ just really wanted to come back, but they didn't want to resurrect Iron Man, so they said, you know what, we'll give you Doctor Doom. How about that? That's kind of how I'm seeing, is that he wanted to come back, but they didn't want to piss all over his death scene in Endgame, so they gave him a different character. And it seems like he's a different universe, so a different universe is Doctor Doom, so I think that really can work. Again, is it a desperation move? Yeah, kinda. But I still think it can work as long as they do it right. And considering they have the Russos back, who made Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, which are most of the best films in the MCU, I think they can pull it off. So back to this movie. I like that we can get emotional scenes that aren't undercut by jokes. Are there emotional scenes that aren't undercut by jokes? Yeah. But especially when it got to Wolverine's backstory, they didn't undercut it with jokes. Like when he's talking to X-23, there wasn't some stupid joke that undercut it, which I like. Again, people bitch about the MCU's comedy, but the MCU knows when to quit. It knows when to stop the comedy and make a good emotional scene. So yeah, this movie pretty much works across the board. Are there jokes that don't work? Yeah. Are there some things I would change if I had seen this script and you'd say, touch up a couple things? Maybe, but honestly not much. So that's Deadpool & Wolverine. I'm going to give this the first A+ of the year. The first A+, and it's almost August. Christ, this year's been awful. So that's what I got, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.